Psychologists have a name for the part of you that would rather bleed than ask for a bandage. But what kind of wound makes the words, "I need you," feel more dangerous than the bleeding itself? Because it is not strength. It is listed, in the clinical notes, as a trauma response. You know this without being told. Something breaks, something gets heavy, and before anyone can even offer, you have already said the two words you say best: "I'm fine." You carry the couch alone. You move the whole apartment alone. You cry in the car, quietly, then walk back inside and ask everyone else how their day was. And it is far more common than it looks. In one national survey, only 59% of adults came out securely attached. A full quarter carried the avoidant wiring we're about to open up, the exact pattern that turns a plain, "Can you help me?" into something the body treats like a threat. And the world calls it strength. They say you're so independent, so capable, the one who never needs a thing. You wear that like a medal. But underneath the medal, there is a specific kind of tired that sleep does not touch. It's the tiredness of holding a door shut for 30 years and calling it standing up straight. So here is the first honest thing, and it's small, but it changes everything. That refusal to ask is not a personality quirk. It has a name. Clinicians call it hyperindependence, or counterdependency. And a therapist named Annie Tanasugarn describes it in one line that tends to stop people cold. She says, hyperindependence is a trauma response disguised as a superpower. You isolate not because you are strong, but because vulnerability registers as a mortal threat. Read that again. A mortal threat. Not uncomfortable, not awkward, deadly. Which means somewhere in you, asking a friend for a lift feels, on a nervous system level, like stepping in front of a car. And that raises a much stranger question. Why would your body file, "I need you," under the same heading as, "I might die"?
Peter, where does that even come from? Why would needing someone feel like a threat? Right. So this one goes back further than most people are ready for. It starts somewhere between 6 months and 3 years old, before you had words, before you had memory you can access. If, in that window, the people you needed weren't reliably there, not cruel necessarily, just absent, distracted, overwhelmed, the infant brain runs a cold little calculation. Reaching out hurts. Reaching out gets no answer. So it stops reaching. It suppresses the need entirely and builds something else instead. Extreme, premature self-sufficiency. Psychologists call the pattern avoidant attachment, and it isn't laziness or coldness. It's a strategy. The child learns to preempt the rejection before it can land. Don't want, and you can't be refused. Don't need, and no one can leave. The logic underneath it is brutal and simple. If I never need anyone, no one can ever fail me again.
So the self-reliance isn't the strength, it's the scar tissue over the place where the need used to be. The child decided, before it could speak, that people were a bad bet, and then spent 30 years calling that decision a personality. And once you see it that way, the "I'm fine" starts to sound different. It's not confidence. It's a two-word wall built by a toddler that you've been maintaining ever since. The wall did its job. It got a small, unprotected human through a stretch where the grown-ups couldn't be counted on. The problem is, nobody ever told the wall the emergency was over. So it keeps standing, decades later, holding back a threat that stopped existing a long time ago. But a wall costs something to hold up. And this is where most people underestimate what hyperindependence actually does to them. Because it doesn't feel like damage. It feels like coping. It feels like winning.
Sarah, what is it doing to the body, though? If it works, why does it wreck people? Yeah, so, picture armor. As a kid, you forged this heavy suit to survive. Genuinely, it kept you safe when nobody was coming. But the armor never came off. It rusted shut. And here's the part nobody warns you about. Human beings are not built to regulate themselves alone. We are built to co-regulate, to borrow calm from another nervous system, to come down off stress by being near someone safe. That's not weakness. That's the wiring. So the armor keeps every hurt out, sure. But it also keeps out the exact thing your body needs to actually rest. You end up strong and starving at the same time. And it shows up in the numbers. People with this avoidant pattern carry roughly 40% more diagnosed anxiety. The armor was supposed to make you feel safe. Instead, you're bracing, alone, all the time.
Strong and starving at the same time. That's the trap. The thing that protects you is the same thing quietly draining you. And because it looks like independence from the outside, nobody thinks to worry about you. You're the one who's fine. You're the one who helps. So you get lonelier inside a life that looks, on paper, completely handled. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, but that's my fault. I built the wall. I keep choosing it, so I should just be able to choose to put it down. And here is the part that lets you breathe. You didn't build it, not really, you inherited it. Because attachment gets passed down, hand to hand, across generations, and not the way you'd guess. When researchers actually measured it, a mother's warmth and sensitivity accounted for only about a quarter of how her child ends up attached to the world. A quarter. The other 3/4 is a dark lottery: genetics, environment, and whatever silent trauma got passed forward through people who were also just doing their best with wiring they never chose.
Peter, so how far back does this actually run? Further than one family, honestly. One of the largest reviews ever done, a researcher named Madigan pooled more than 20,000 infant-parent pairs, and it found that barely half of infants worldwide land in a secure attachment. Barely half. So this thing you've been carrying as a private failing? It's closer to a global inheritance. Nobody handed you a manual for needing people, because the person who was supposed to hand it to you never got one either. It's a gap that gets passed down in the dark, generation after generation, each one convinced the armor is just who they are. Your parents didn't teach you to refuse help. They handed you a nervous system that had already decided help wasn't coming, and called it good parenting, because it's the only thing anyone had ever handed them.
Which quietly removes the shame from the whole thing. You are not broken, and you are not uniquely cold. You are running a survival program that was installed before you had a vote, by people running the same program before you. But knowing that is not the same as being free of it. Because the program is still running. It runs every time your phone is in your hand, a friend's name right there, and you put it down and decide you'll handle it yourself. It runs every time someone asks, "Are you okay?" and your mouth says, "Yeah," before your brain even arrives.
Sarah, so what does it actually cost, in the end, to keep it on? The thing it costs is other people. That's the quiet tragedy of it. When you never let anyone carry anything, you never let anyone close. People can only bond with you through the doors you leave open, and you've welded them all shut. So you end up surrounded and unreached. Everyone thinks you're the reliable one, the strong one, and not a single person knows you, because being known requires the one thing the armor exists to prevent: letting someone see you need them. And it's a slow loss, not a loud one. There's no single day the closeness leaves. It just quietly never arrives. Friendship after friendship staying warm but shallow, because you kept handing people the polished version and pocketing the real one. You didn't just lock the hurt out, you locked the love out with it. Same door.
And that's the real cost of, "I've got it," not the exhaustion, the distance. Every time you refuse the help you actually need, you're not proving you're strong. You're teaching the people who love you to stop offering. And eventually, they do. So the next time it happens, the couch, the bad news, the 2 words already forming, I want you to notice what you're really deciding. You're not deciding whether you're strong enough to carry it alone. You always were. You're deciding whether to let anyone near. Because the truth underneath all of it is this: asking for help was never the weakness. The refusal was the wound talking. And "I've got it," the phrase you're proudest of, the one that feels most like you, was never really strength. It was just the sound of a child, still standing at a door, deciding no one is coming. You get to be the one who finally opens it.